Smoke started coming through the vent. The car was on fire. We found an empty field. We popped the hood and we threw handfuls of dirt on the engine until the flames went out. Right there across the road was a rough North Florida Roadhouse bar. It was the kind of place you usually avoided at all costs. But we went in, we ordered drinks, and we sat at the bar in a stunned silence. I finally spoke. We almost burnt up. We have no car and we have nowhere to stay. That's when a huge bearded man beside us said he knew of a motel down the road and he'd give us a lift in his van. We followed him out. My best friend slid open the side door. I climbed into the passenger seat. The man got in behind the wheel. He then reached under his seat and he pulled out a machete. My heart stopped. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. But he then grinned, looked me in the eyes, took the blade, put it in a hole in the floor, wiggled it around and said, "That is how I put my van in gear." Over 2 decades later, I did almost die. I was so distracted with life, I walked right in front of a fast-moving car. Lying in a hospital bed, in a trauma unit, my wife walked in, and our eyes met. We both started to cry. And I realized just how close I was to leaving my beautiful wife a widow, my 2 wonderful sons without a father, my incredible rescue dog without his favorite human, my sister without her brother and her business partner. Almost dying, that changed me and how I look at a lot of things. We never know when we're going to die, but we all will. I started to pay attention to how often families fight and start falling apart after someone dies. And it's not just because of the grief and pain. It's because of all the problems of what to do with all the stuff. I can't believe I almost did the same thing to my family. When I got out of the hospital, I started to look around at all the items around me. And I realized, wow, I can't believe I did that. I started to wonder, do people in other parts of the world do a better job at talking about death and planning their death? I got really curious. And I became aware that in North America, death, it tends to be a taboo subject. We do not like to think about our own death, our own mortality. We avoid talking about it until crisis forces the conversation. And this creates so much distress and turmoil. After some research, I found that in Scandinavian countries, and especially in Sweden, they are doing a much better job at this. They even have a word for it, "Dörstädning," meaning death cleaning. In the Swedish culture, it is common and encouraged and normal to organize and downsize their stuff before they die so their families are not burdened. And they do this while they still have a strong mind, lots of energy, and long before there's a crisis. In the book, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning, author Margareta Magnusson says, a loved one wishes to inherit nice things from you, not all things. According to a study by Legal Shield on the Business Wire website, 90% of Americans say having a will is important, yet less than 50% actually possess one. Estates with minimal family conflict share a common thread. The person who had died had already established a clear and thoughtful plan for their possessions. And this plan included who receives what and why they include it. A plan for our personal possessions should be standard in your will. And this plan should include all the important items that you own. Get started by listing all your important items. And these items, they're going to fall under in 3 categories. I like to call it VHS. Your most valuable items, your family heirlooms, and your sentimental items. And your sentimental items, it's going to be what's sentimental to you, but also what's sentimental to your family. The sentimental items are usually the items that are going to cause the most problems after you die. Begin by overloading this list with most of the items that you own, and then go through the list and make sure and cross off all the items that don't fit under the categories of most valuable, family heirlooms, and sentimental items. Once you completed your list, you're going to set a date with your family, and you're going to discuss the items on the list. Make copies of the list, give a copy to each family member, and see if the items on your list matches what your family wants. There's going to be items on the list nobody wants, or maybe there's items on the list that more than one family member wants. Remember, you get to decide. Once you've met with your family, collect all the lists back and make a clean copy and include it in your will. When we as adults create a clear and detailed plan for our personal possessions before we die, we save our loved ones so much stress and grief after we die. By next Friday, go buy a notebook and then spend the next week writing down all your important items, set a date with your family, discuss the items, get feedback about your possessions, and then finalize the plan. When we take a thoughtful approach to the end of our lives, and we make sure our wishes are known, we just give a little more peace and grace to our passing, which we will all eventually face.